and I want to redo this back area here because I'm not entirely thrilled with it. When I was building this, I was debating doing an extension, which I think I will as just a separate piece. So I will definitely do a video on modifying that. All right, so as you saw in the intro, we need to work on this back portion here. So step one for me is I've already gone ahead and laser cut up this piece of wood. I'm not gonna lie, it is larger than what the final size needs to be, and I've done that on purpose. So that way I can kind of mock up, for lack of a better term, how I want things to go in there. So step one for me is I need to trim back this excess material here and also along this edge here so I can get this to fit in properly. Then I'm gonna kind of rough in the shape on here, cut it out, we'll glue it in, and then we can come along and kind of re-sculpt this scene to make it work how we really want it to. Probably gonna make use of this little clicky retractable knife that I picked up at Harbor Freight. When they go on sale, they're worth buying. They've got multiple blades. They are amazing for cutting foam. Rule of thumb though, once the blade starts to go dull, dispose of it, break it, snap the piece off, whatever it takes. A dull knife will just chew the foam up, a sharp one will actually cut through it. So there's your 2-second PSA. Whoops. So step one. Okay, so now that I have that worked out, I'm gonna come along and kind of just eyeball in how I think I want the scene to be. Now obviously I have made this quite tall, and part of me goes probably a bit taller than it needs to be, but at the same time I figured you can always come back and cut things off. It's kind of hard to layer stuff in there. So let me go ahead, figure that out. I think I'm going to cut this off camera. Much as I would love to stick this in the laser, I don't really think that's going to be possible with this edge sticking up. I do have one of those kind of like vibrating saw things from Harbor Freight. That and probably some sanding will get this super good enough. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll touch base with you guys. Okay, so what I've done in the meantime is I've installed the back panels, and I've also come along and glued in some foam pieces. This is mostly just to take up space for when I'm applying the ground goop. And I've also taped off the tracks as well, because obviously I don't want that getting on there. So I believe this is the original ground goop that I actually used on this layout, which isn't a bad thing for color consistency. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to literally just apply this on there. I still haven't decided fully if I want to put a rock casting in here or not, and I have a little bit of time to do that, but let me at least get the ground goop down and then we can go from there. Now that scene's really starting to come together. I think that's going to look really, really awesome. So let me just patch up one tiny little area down here. Just do some. chunk down there. All right, I think we're going to let this dry, and the nice thing about waiting for it to dry is it gives me some time to think about stuff. I decide I'm not going to go over it with any kind of scenery base or anything like that. I'm just going to let it dry. Then we can kind of figure out rocks and things like that and go from there. But I'm liking this. Is really, it's one of those gambles that I think is going to pay off. Okay, so now it's time to work on the hill back here. The original plan, and I'm hoping to pull it off at some point, but for now I'm not going to do it. I want to come along and put at least 1 or 2 shallow relief rock castings in here, but I cannot seem to find for the life of me where my rock molds got to. So for the time being, I'm going to show you a quick trick for covering this hill, and you know what, if it looks great, I might just keep it that way, because I have seen in some of my photos from trips that I've been on, areas where there were dirt excavations where it was extremely steep. Now that doesn't mean that it can't slide at a point in the future, but it was holding, so we might just keep it. So step 1 is I'm going to come over with just this cheap acrylic paint. This is some burnt umber, which is pretty close to what the color is here. So inside this Nature's Bounty B12 vitamin container is actually a custom mixture of unsanded grout and just some play sand from the hardware store. It's cheaper to buy the unsanded stuff and then add your own sand to it. I usually do about a 1-part grout to 3 to 4 parts sand. There's no real science to it. Looks right, it is right. The sand helps break up the particle size. And then I have some soapy water in here that I'm just going to mist on here afterwards to help set the grout in place as well. So let's get some of this acrylic on here and then go from there. The one thing I will say that is helpful about applying the paint is, besides the fact that the paint provides a consistent base color, it also helps to provide something for the sand and grout to bite onto. When I was doing the project for one of my classes, which I'll have a video out on, I used this same technique with actually quite successful results. So it does work well. And the other thing that's nice is we have some of the blended green ground foam on there, which is perfectly fine, but I kind of want to cover everything over and start afresh. It's just simpler that way. All right, I'm going to say that's covered well enough. It's pretty hot today, so I have to work quickly to make sure that the paint doesn't dry. So the trick when applying this is to use the sifter to help you more or less just gently drop it on there. Now, the one thing I will say is you are going to make a little bit of a mess, so I will be cleaning this up later, but that's turning out quite nicely. Okay, I'm going to say that's good enough. I'm not too worried about all the stuff down there at the bottom. I'll just try and not hit that down with the soapy water too much, but I'm going to gently, not get the structures too wet, gently mist this down. Definitely will say it's a lot harder working on a scene that already has stuff in it, but you know what? That's just the nature of this project. All right, as with before, sorry about the really funky angle here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit and dry for a while. Then what I'm probably going to come along and do is just mist it down again lightly. The idea is to keep the grout moist, so hopefully the grout will set and the paint will hold it down. Then what we can do is we can damp this down with a little bit of scenic cement, hit it with a little bit of blended turf, and really make it look more than just a giant sand dune. Okay, so this has had some time to dry, as you can tell. So in this bag here, I have some Woodland Scenics green blend fine turf. It's predominantly what's used here on the layout, and I think it'll look good on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly kind of just dust this on to here. Whoops. But it works good for simulating like grass and stuff that might be growing on a hill. And don't worry, some of this will kind of get dislodged, for lack of a better term, when I go to glue it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 70% alcohol here, mist this down to moisten it. Then I think I'm going to come along with the soapy water. And then I'm just using some thinned white glue that I'm just going to gently try to, try being the operative word here, try to just lay on here very gently to lock everything in place. So alcohol, yeah, that's good and wet. You want it wet so that way when you come along with the holding medium of your choice, it actually stands a better chance of effectively just wicking into the base material instead of just flushing it all away, which, trust me, we don't want that. All right, now that I got that done, I think I'm gonna just lightly sprinkle on a tiny bit more of the green blend here. Nothing too extreme, but now that we have some glue base, it should go on and stick a little easier. All right, I'm really liking how that's turning out. Now, off camera, I might hit it down with just a very light sprinkling of another color of foam, but I think you guys get the process at this point. So let me see if I decide to do that. And if not, regardless, we'll come on back and I'll show you the finished product. Due to the nature of this being on the back side of the layout, it's a little bit of a challenge to film, but I'll do my best. So what I've done is after I applied the sand and grout and I applied the blended turf, I let it dry for a bit and I just decided to work a little bit off camera on this. There's just something somewhat freeing about that, and by about the third time of seeing somebody apply ground foam, it becomes a little redundant. So what I opted to do was just come along and apply some of this coarse dark green foliage to a couple of spots on the back hill here, more or less just to simulate bushes and things like that that would be growing on the hill. Also, you may have noticed, spinning it around constantly, also, you may have noticed I have planted one tree over here, and ideally I would love to add more, but the problem is the only logical spot is floating in space, so that's not going to work. But I figured if and when I build the extension to this, well, you know, we can plant some trees over there. So that is where I'm at with this scene for the moment. But like I've said before, there's still a lot of stuff that I want to work on still on the layout, but it's good to reach kind of, for lack of a better term, a natural stopping point. The nice thing is now, if I'm taking photos of stuff, at least I have a better looking background for it, and I can easily either Photoshop in or just throw a little backdrop up there for photos. And it creates a really unique scene for photographing and filming equipment and things like that. So that's where the layout is at for the moment. I'm still trying to figure out things like a crane to fit in here. Definitely going to need some figures and things like that. But you know what? This is coming along way better than I thought it would. And it's kind of nice to just work on a small layout like this where you do something that's small relative to the layout as a whole, but because it's so tiny, it has a massive impact on it, and it really makes you feel like you're making a ton of forward progress, which is super encouraging. So that's one of the things I enjoy about doing these micro layouts. So if you guys are interested at all in any of the structures that are used on this layout, the bases that I'm using for it, or want to get in touch with my friend who makes the trees on this layout, all that information will be in the pinned comment down below. Obviously, the trees are not my creation, but the bases and the structures are, and proceeds from that help support me, which helps support the channel, which helps support fun little projects like this. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you here next time on Make It With Calvin.